everyone. Long time no see, and I'm sorry for it being so long. I've been putting little notes in my comments here on YouTube to let people know kind of what's been going on. But this is going to be a video that basically talks about why I haven't been here. The majority doesn't really have to do with the cancer, but this whole channel of mine is my story of a single mom with cancer. So this is part of my story, and a lot of it is family related. And yeah, so if you want to hear about it, you can, keep watching. And otherwise, you can go on to my next video, which will be out hopefully within a week. Just so that you know, my next video will be actually about my next treatment that I am on. So yes, I have started another treatment. All right, so again, without ado, let's get on to this video. Other things that have been going on. So after my father's brother Ted passed away, my dad ended up having a few more issues with his heart. And before he ended up having issues, but then on top of that, my mom's oldest sister also passed away. And this was like within a few weeks that happened. My birthday was on the 27th of March, and then on the 28th, my mom's oldest sister Shirley passed away. And then the next evening, which was March 29th, around 9 o'clock, I just picked up my oldest son from a church function called Awana, and I just picked him up when my dad called me. He was having a hard time breathing, and he had told me that he was dizzy and his doctor wanted him to go right to the ER. So I, of course, was picturing, the worst. What happened last time was that when his heart had stopped for 30 minutes, he couldn't breathe, and he was having a hard time with a lot of things, and he tried calling my brother. He works with my brother, and my brother typically would take his phone to work, so he could typically get a hold of him. And he tried calling him, but he wasn't able to get a hold of him. Here, my brother had left his phone at home, so he didn't even know he had left him a message. But because he didn't hear back from him, he decided to call the ambulance. 911 came, and they basically, all my dad says is he remembers the 911 operator saying, "I will stay on, don't worry, I will stay on the phone until they get there," and then he doesn't remember anything. Basically, by the time he got there, he had already passed out and had no heartbeat. And they worked on him for 30 minutes. They'd shocked his heart 7 times before they went to the ER, and then another 2 times when they got him to the ER. So they were able to get his heart started again, and they put him basically in a medically induced coma to make sure his brain didn't have any damages from that lack of oxygen. Somehow he ended up waking up the next day with no damage whatsoever. So when I got the call, I was basically fearing the worst. And I know CPR, I know hospital CPR because of my job, and my son had taken it in gym but wasn't certified. So while we're driving there, I am asking him, do you remember what to do? Okay, what do you feel comfortable doing? Okay, what if this happens? Kind of like setting up the scene for if we get there in the worst case scenario. We got there, and my dad was having a hard time breathing, but he was walking fine, and we got him to the hospital. and that was Friday night. By the next day, they said that they did find enzymes in his blood, which means he had a heart attack. And, but they kept him in the hospital until Monday. Monday, they released him, and then he was going to go to work the very next day, which was Tuesday. Like I said, my brother Donnie, he's my youngest brother, he had talked to him on the phone. He told him my dad can't really work, obviously, because of his heart, so he just oversees its construction, and he oversees it, and he just picks up small things. So he told him he was going to go and pick up some of these nails and then get into work. And so my brother's like, that's no problem. And his wife, his girlfriend, fiance, had seen him that morning. She has her own cleaning business, and so we helped her carry the cleaning products out to the car. And, you know, they said, I love you, and that was that. And my dad ended up driving to work, and there was another guy there. My brother, I guess, had his saw table and everything set up. And my dad asked the other worker, where's Donnie? And the worker said, he's in the bathroom. He's like, okay. So my dad went up and he knocked on the door. He's like, yo, I got to get in there. And he didn't hear anything, so he walked away. I guess 10 minutes went by. He didn't hear anything again, so he went back up there and he's knocking on, yo, bud, I got to get in there. He didn't hear anything, but then he heard a thump. He knew something was going on. I'm going to try to say this without getting emotional. Basically, my dad heard the thump and he knew something was up, so he ran, yelled for the other guy to call 911, and he jimmied the door open, and my brother was passed out on the ground. And my brother had a history of drugs and alcohol, but had been doing good for many years. Now, I knew a few months ago, like February, that he had started drinking again. And I told him that I was going to support him, but, you know, I said, are you doing drugs? And he promised me he wasn't. I'm like, please, you know, can you just stop doing the drinking? Because you're a great guy if you make the right decisions. But if you have anything in your system, even if it's drinking, you make stupid decisions. I said, you know, and I told him I love him and I'll support him, but, you know, he better be telling me the truth about the drugs. And he promised me he wasn't. Well, he had started, I guess, around that time. And evidently his girlfriend had known, his fiance had known. And when my dad checked him, he had an IV in his arm. And he had overdosed on drugs. He didn't have a heartbeat. We don't know how long he was in there. He could have been in there for an hour without a heartbeat. They'd gotten him to the hospital and got his heart starting, but there was no brain function whatsoever, and his brain was swelling. There was no neurological function. And by the time I got there, they had said, the doctor had come in and said they found his, on his driver's license, it said he was a donor, and that we needed to really consider this at this point. We called my sister in from Michigan. Everybody came in. The next day, they put him on this thing where his body temperature went into hypothermia, and they were hoping that his brain would be able to heal from whatever lack of oxygen there was, and that he would wake up and have the least amount of damage. But we knew, because we know someone who's been in this situation, that it probably wouldn't be good even if he did. He probably would have a lot of brain damage and not want to live that way. But by the second day, his lungs had started to fail, and his brain had started to swell even more. And on the 4th, April 4th, we decided well, we had decided we were going to take him off, but we wanted him to be a organ donor, so we gave them time to find bodies, people to be able to donate his parts to. 5 of his body parts were able to be donated, and on the 4th at around 8:30, they did this one. They asked us if we wanted to, if it was okay for them to do a walk of honor, I think it was, and basically it was amazing. Before they did that, they actually had people come in and try to do as much memory things with us. I had already done this thing for me with my kids, where someone had taken my fingerprint and put it in like this clay that hardens so that they'd have my fingerprint in a shape of a heart. So I had already gone out to buy that stuff and do that with him. I was in the midst of doing that around 6 o'clock, and originally I took his thumb and with some clay shaped it in a heart and pressed his finger into it, his thumb into it, but it was just too big because he had swollen so much. So we ended up taking his pinky, and so this is one of the things. I'm not sure how good it'll get, if you can see that. Inside is his fingerprint. On the back, it's a shape as a heart. On the back, it says his name with his birth date and the day he passed, which was the 4th. He was his birthday was July 26, 82. So he was too young. But I was in the midst of doing this when a nurse came in and asked if we wanted to do a heart fingerprint project so we could memorabilia. And she didn't know I was doing this, and I didn't know she was going to come, so it was kind of the exact right timing. And they had these, and on the back it has a healing prayer. And she had ink, or I'm not sure, wait a minute. Not ink, paint. And asked us what colors we'd want, and we chose blue. And she took 2 different blues, and then she took his finger and made a heart with his fingerprints right there. Now the actual fingerprint doesn't show up like it shows up in mine, like the actual fingerprint, but you can tell it's his fingerprint. And then I actually asked her if I could use some of her ink for some of ours, and this one here is a little bit of his fingerprint that you can feel, and then that fingerprint. But the other ones that showed more of the actual fingerprint with the ink have already been given to certain people. But after that, the organization who did who was in charge of the finding the organs and that whole thing, kind of had this ceremony, and we prayed, everybody prayed, and then they asked us if it was okay to do this walk of remembrance, I think is what it's called. And I'm going to put a little clip of what it is. But basically, when they know that it's time to go your last time, when they take the body to the surgical room, or actually it was the surgical unit, the family can follow behind. So the body, he's still alive, technically, and they're pumping. They got to keep the body okay so that the heart could, and all the organs are still good. And while they're walking to the, transporting him to the surgical room or surgical unit, the family can walk behind, and they do this thing where the workers and people will line up alongside and just in memory and quiet respect stand on the side. And so we walked down the hall, and then we walked around, and then we got into the elevator and they made sure everybody, like, it's like, it was almost like people knew it was happening, but I'm sure people who were there visiting didn't know what was going on, but they saw and kind of knew that they were giving the space. And I mean, we were bawling our eyes and it was a little obvious, but I don't know how everyone else knew, but it was amazing. And it was sad because one of Donnie's friends from church I know worked there, and while we had come down around the corner and in the elevator, came out of the elevator and around, and I looked, and there he was standing there, and he looked at me like, and he mouthed, "Who is that?" And I said, "It's Donnie." And he was like, and he like had a double take, and then he ran up and gave me a hug. It was just so emotional. It was just special. But the event itself was special. But what was even more special was that a few days later, a friend of mine contacted me. Her mom works at St. Mary's in the ICU, which is the name of the hospital. And she said, I asked my stepmother, not her mom, her mother-in-law, if she had worked for him, you know, if she had worked on him. And she is, I know she's not allowed to say it, but she said no, but oddly enough, I was honored to be able to do the fingerprints with them. And I guess she knew she does the fingerprints. And she said, I got to know the family. It was very special. She goes, and it was just amazing that I got to be a part of the walk of honor and a remembrance. And she had said to us that even though the organization has been there for quite a few years and they've known about it, they've offered it to parents or to the families, and either the families didn't agree to it, or some didn't agree, or it was an emergency and they had to take the bodies quickly, or something always had happened, and they never were able to actually do a walk of remembrance for anyone. And my brother's was the first time they had done it at the hospital. That just made it even more special, because that was the hospital he was born at. That was the hospital my son was born at. That was the hospital I've always gotten my treatment at. That was the hospital my dad's always had his issues. My dad had had a heart attack again, or had a heart problem the night of my brother's funeral, and that's where he went. They got him out in time because they knew the situation. But it made everything, I mean, just to know that was the first time they'd ever done it, and people had said, she said that people were talking about it the next day. That just made me, I don't know, it made it even more special. But his body was able to, his parts of his body were able to keep 5 people alive. His heart went to someone in New York.
What? Is it good? Oh, kidney. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Dan's getting the chair. Donnie.
And I know it's hard to talk about drugs and what the outcome is. Our pastor who did the funeral was a pastor from my dad's church, and my brother was part of their addictions group, and he was the one who led it. And he had said that, you know what, maybe God knew that this was the start of another long struggle. And you know, everyone knows how much the person hurts when they're trying to stop their drugs and they just can't, and how much they feel bad for hurting other people, and how many people are hurt because of it. That maybe God was just saving us years of more pain from his addiction, saving him from it. But it was really difficult to hear it. But just the people who were affected by him and his fiance's kids, their comments, and to know that people have been saved, and we know that the body parts that were given are still doing well. We have gotten an update. So, yeah. Another thing, my mom ended up, because of the emotionalness, ended up in the hospital the weekend before the funeral, and missed her sister's funeral, and then ended up missing my brother's funeral. So she's going to need prayer, because closure is a big thing, and I think she needed closure. And my dad, like I said, ended up in the hospital the night before, but he ended up in the hospital again the following week. And it was the day I was supposed to start chemo. And it turns out he's in congestive heart failure. Since then, while we were preparing for the funeral, he died on Thursday. And we, kind of had a crash course in putting a funeral together on the least budget and as quick as we could. His funeral was the following Thursday, and that Monday was the day my son had his heart procedure at CHOP, and that was a full day event. And it turned out that the doctors were supposed to induce the arrhythmia that has been causing all the problems, and they did as much as they could, and they weren't able to induce it. And basically, his arrhythmia is the kind that you have to catch in the middle of it to be able to fix it. So he still had to go through the whole procedure and all of the healing afterwards. He missed a week of school. He was in pain. And I think he feels embarrassed. I think he thinks that since they didn't find anything, that people think he faked it, and that's so not true, or that he has done something to cause it to happen or whatever. And it's so not true. It's just the type of arrhythmia needs to be caught in the middle of actually happening to be able to fix. And so the doctor did take him off of the medications, which is good because he was having side effects from that anyway. But he still might have it, and pray that if he does, we're able to get him right to CHOP and they can do the procedure as quick as possible. But that was another added stress in the middle of all of this. We had the funeral on that Thursday, which was amazing because we got to see our family that we hadn't seen in a while. And we got to see at my brother's funeral a cousin of mine who I never met, that a lot of my family hadn't seen for years, came, and that was amazing. And it was just good to see everybody again. Just it was hard. So yeah, that's what is the reason why I haven't focused on making a video in a while, and why I had to postpone my treatment. So I want to end this by saying thank you to everyone who has posted messages that you're thinking about me, or asking how I'm doing because I hadn't posted, or maybe saying that you're praying for me or thinking about me, or giving me advice when I put things below during this time. Without God and prayers and people's support, I don't know if I can make it. Thank you so much. So I will be posting another video soon, and that one is going to be about basically, I guess it's going to be a day in the life of me with how my new chemo goes, from in the morning, waking up, getting my kids up, going to chemo, coming home, being a mom, and all that on this current chemotherapy that I'm on. Obviously, next week or the week after is probably going to be different because I'm going to have more of the actual treatment in me. So my side effects are going to be different, but I just wanted to give a basic idea of how it is. So keep an eye out for that video. And remember to subscribe or like if you like my video. Hit the big thumb up. And I am on other social media, and all of it is going to be in my description below. And have a good day. God bless. And thank you again for all your support.